Alrighty, it's 8 o'clock straight up, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for joining us. This is week 2 of 5 with our preseason series. The topics tonight deal with the kicking game, both free and scrimmage kicks. Somewhere between 10 and 15% of our time on the field is spent in the kicking game. It doesn't get a lot of attention, and consequently, we're not as proficient at it as we are regular plays from scrimmage. So we need to do a better job with that. And that's why it's part of the series heading into the beginning of the season. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with scrimmage kicks tonight. The kicking game is certainly a very dangerous part of the game, but very, very exciting. And it's something that we have to be prepared for in all scenarios and handle the business and keep things as safe and as fair as possible for the teams involved. So the old expression is if there's something that's going to go wrong, it's probably going to happen in the kicking game, not just punts, but also free kicks. But since we're talking about punts, we'll just talk about some things that can go wrong, like breakdowns, whether it's a bad snap, a fumbled snap, a block kick. There are a number of situations that can cause things to break down quickly, and we've got to be prepared for that, be thinking about those things ahead of time, and know what we need to do in certain situations, not only downfield, but especially at the line of scrimmage. And going along with that, kicks that challenge the neutral zone, whether they're blocked or otherwise, we need to know who touched and where they touched the ball in terms of the relation to the neutral zone. Legal and illegal contact downfield can be a key factor to something that may lead to bringing back a touchdown or cause a touchdown to be allowed. Those kicks down near the goal line are very exciting and often controversial, so we need to be prepared to deal with those, as well as players that engage near the sideline. Now, one of the big things about the kicking game is that we really don't have a lot of opportunity to work on the kicking game. When you go to your scrimmages in another couple of weeks, it's doubtful that you're going to get many reps from punt formation. They may kick a little bit, but it certainly won't be live. So we need to invest time, our own time, as we prepare for our season to mentally have imagery in our mind in terms of situations that can come up. And we can do that very successfully with video if you have the access to it. All right, so the big thing with punts is we're recognizing that the line to gain has not been achieved. The first thing we have to do is to make sure that we finish plays with good dead ball supervision. When the play ends and it's short, we can't turn our backs and sprint downfield expecting that we'll be in position. We have to finish the play first. The other thing is we need to make sure that we handle all of our pre-snap routine. Is the down box correct? Do we have substitutions from A or B, which is likely in scrimmage kick situations? All those things that we talk about and we will talk about when we get further into our preseason series. We've got to think through these things ahead of time. Our initial field position is very, very important. And as deep wings and also the back judge, we need to make sure that we are 7 yards behind the kick returner unless the goal line is involved. And then we might be a little bit deeper or maybe even a little more shallow than the 7 yards to defend the goal line. But the guideline is 7 yards. The back judge is going to be offset to the left or right slightly to make sure that there's an angle there, and the back judge may need to move from one side to the other based on the direction of the kick once it becomes airborne. Our deep wings are at the back edge of the white and are going to stay at the back edge of the white. And there are reasons for that, which we will get to as we continue along here in this presentation. All right, so first of all, we need to see the kick off of the foot. That's going to give us an initial read in terms of the depth and direction. Now, we can't stare at the ball. We don't need to stare at the ball. What we need to do is to get a general feeling in terms of, is this going to be in my third of the field? Is it in the middle of the field? Did this guy really hit it? And now I need to give ground to make sure that my cushion is covered, and also perhaps the goal line. We need to be able to make those determinations. Now, in your pregame, when you're out on the field anyway, that's a great opportunity for the deep three to get some work in. While the punters are kicking in practice and the kick returners are fielding those kicks, we can get to our 7 yards, we can make our adjustments, we can practice putting the kick returner on our inside eye, which then opens our flyers coming down the field. We can also get a feel for how well the kickers kick. Trust me, if they can't kick in pregame, they're probably not going to be very good in the game either. The other thing that you can judge is the wind. What sort of effect is the wind having on the kicks? So we're going to adjust based on the depth and the direction of the kick, probably back more than we're going to move up. Distance is our friend. So unless we're just really totally out of the play, it's pretty hard to be too deep from a deep three perspective. But it's certainly very easy to be too short if we don't react properly. And again, the video will show that. We need to determine the first threats coming down the field. Many times it's the flyers that are coming from the outside, but not always. Sometimes the threats come, like for instance, a snapper. Maybe the snapper is a really, really good athlete, in addition to being able to snap the ball very, very quick, agile, and so on. So that person may be the first threat down the field, but we need to recognize those and then take into consideration what happens to them and what they do to opponents. And again, as previously mentioned, it's really, really important that we keep a broad perspective. If we get too narrow with our vision, we short ourselves the ability to effectively officiate the play. So in the pregame, when the kickers are kicking and the returners are practicing catching, as you move, keep that kick returner on your inside eye, depending on which side of the field you're on. And then you'll get some feeling in terms of the players coming down the field. All right. Back judges are the ones that are going to beanbag the end of the kick. Unless it goes out of bounds, then we don't really need a beanbag. Then our deep wing is typically going to take that spot out of bounds unless it's a shank or a block kick, and then perhaps the short wing will take it. It's the back judge's responsibility to stay with the kick returner until A, we have firm control. So if that ball comes out, the back judge is going to stay with the kick returner to the point where if the ball comes loose, he's going to have a fumble. And then the other part of it is typically within a step or so, that kick returner is going to cut upfield. They may take a side step to the right or to the left, but pretty quickly they're going to want to make a move upfield. So you're going to stay with them until they do turn upfield. Now that's really important for the deep wings to understand, because you're not going to have support from the back judge for blocking patterns until that kick returner, A, has firmly controlled the ball, and B, turned it upfield. Now, the deep wings are going to have the end of the kick, unless we get inside the 2-yard line, going to the goal line, going in. You're going to have the end of the run. Now, the end of every run, whether out of bounds, tackled in bounds, is going to start on a yard line. We're not going to start a series in between yard lines. So when the kick goes away from, say, the side judge, it's not like he or she is out of the play. That person has responsibility behind the action and the return. And keep in mind, there's always the possibility that the kick returner will reverse their field. Now, all of a sudden, you will be the point of attack. So you need to make sure that you keep your cushion and be alert to cutbacks, because when those occur, then we run into blindside blocks, blocks in the back, those sorts of things, because the blocking angles have all changed. All right, fair catches. Back judge has the whistle. Only one whistle on the field on a fair catch, and the deep wings are going to have the dead ball spot. Back judges, stay out of forward progress, stay back there, keep the big picture, make sure that you're finishing the play with good dead ball officiating, and let your two other deep officials come up and make a determination on where we're going to start that next series. Fair catches, we don't need bean bags because we will have a spot that'll be determined by the deep wings. Muffed and rolling kicks, too many times we have a tendency where we want to check up and we want to stay parallel with that rolling or muffed kick, when what we really need to do is to continue with our cushions so that we have proper supervision of not only the ball, but more importantly, the players around it, and obviously the goal line and the pylon if that becomes applicable. Keep a wide perspective, and slow whistles are not only advised, they're required. We don't need to hurry to get a whistle and end up with an inadvertent whistle because of it. Punch challenging the goal line. That's certainly something that we need to be aware of. If we get a really, really long kick, we might have to take that action on the run. But most often, we should be able to read the depth and the direction of the kick immediately and get some depth and still perform our other duties, get to the pylon by making a full commitment to that retreat rather than cruising. Cruising is that we're just kind of jogging along as opposed to making that dynamic movement to get where we need to be. Back judge will have the goal line from inside out, and obviously the deep wings need to get to the goal line pylon to have the outside in. Now, when we get to the point where we're going to line up at the goal line pylon, the deep wings should start at a 45-degree angle, slightly behind the pylon. Now, here's the key. Unless that pylon is going to be challenged on the fly, as soon as the kick goes and you recognize that isn't going to be the scenario, you need to rotate over to goal line extended. You don't continue to officiate there. Even if the ball is bouncing in that direction, we still want you goal line extended as opposed to being at that 45. If the kick is going towards, let's say, the field judge's side of the field, the side judge needs to have, and the kick is not fielded by the kick returner. The side judge must know what the kick returner did after he signaled for a fair catch, because by rule, the kick returner cannot block unless they've touched the ball after they've given a fair catch signal. So someone needs to have the kick returner, and that would be the opposite deep wing on the other side of the field that the back judge did not bracket with that official. All right, quick kicks. That's been in the game for a number of years. We didn't see many of them for a while, but the last few years, obviously, this option has been discussed at coaches' clinics because the last couple of years, we've seen a resurgence of the quick kick strategy. Now, we need to understand that the quick kick is intended to reduce the chances that Team B will have an opportunity to return the kick. They're concerned about a kick returner, or there's some other reason that they're employing a quick kick But we need to think along with the teams. We need to have that football IQ. When we have a situation that's near midfield or game conditions are such that it might happen, we need to be thinking. And if we have the benefit of O2O, our internal intercom, it'd be a good time to key the mic and say, hey, heads up, this could be a quick kick, so that we're all thinking along the same lines. What they're trying to do, again, is to avoid a return, if they can at all, by the other team. So we need to mentally adjust, because if they're starting in a position other than a typical scrimmage kick formation, then we know that they can run, pass, or kick out of that formation. But we'll show a clip later on that will illustrate that we do need to have a clear understanding, because even though we might be expecting a kick, if it becomes a regular play from scrimmage, then all of those applicable rules go into effect. Offensive interference, ineligible downfield, all those sort of things are in play. So we got to be thinking, if it's a kick, okay, we have one set of rules, but if it's a play from scrimmage, then it's like any other down that we're playing on first, second, or third. We want, once the quick kick is made, we need to get depth so that we always protect the goal line and get behind any potential return that might take place, however rare. All right, so in sum, it's a very complex part of the game. Big plays result from this. Oftentimes, close games are decided by the kicking game, and we have to be prepared to deal with it and try not to be surprised. Every now and then, we all get surprised, whether it's an NFL official or any of us working at levels below the NFL. But the more we can not be surprised, how's that for a statement? The better off we're going to be out on the field. Work to keep your cushion, always defend the goal line, keep your vision wide as opposed to narrow, and remain behind returns and loose balls. And then finally, just one final reminder, slow whistles. A lot of our inadvertent whistles come out of the kicking game, particularly free kicks. All right, let's jump into our plays now. Starting with scrimmage kicks. All right, now we're going to move really, really quickly because we have a number of plays to get through, not only with scrimmage, but also free kicks. So if we're going too quick and you do have a question, make sure you use the chat. All right, this first clip is one you saw last week relative to sideline control, but is one that is worthy of review now from a scrimmage kick formation standpoint. And there's the notation about clearing the field and keeping people back behind what would be the limit lines. Okay, go ahead and run it. Our back judge does a really nice job here. On this particular kick, our deep wing on that side of the field initially is in really good position, but you're going to notice as Gregor lets this run that the depth of the kick takes the kick returner back approximately parallel to where he is. We should have backed up to where the back judge is, which is at about the 35-yard line. Back judge puts a beanbag down for the end of the kick and then resumes normal officiating. All right, so let it run. Kick returner goes up the sideline, goes out of bounds. As previously mentioned last week, we have contact with a coach. That's our fault, and we won't elaborate on that any further, but we need to clear the sidelines. We have room to work. All right, next clip, Gregor. Just a real quick note here. This kick returner is going to get his hands above shoulder level, and I just want to point out that anything above shoulder height, straight out, we're going to deem that as an invalid fair catch signal, meaning that team B is not going to be able to advance this ball. If his arms were down, a foot or so at shoulder level, we would deem that as simply pointing at the ball, but those are too high. Now, here's the coaching point that is really, really important. The first time you see a kick returner do this, you need to go to him and you need to say, you understand that when your arms and your hands get above your shoulders, no one on your team can return this ball. And then the other part of it is whoever's on that sideline needs to deliver the same message to the head coach. Why do we do that? Because later in the game, if we shut something down because the kick returner comes up and now wants to field the ball in advance and we shut it down, we want to have already provided the anticipatory set with the coach that, nope, he didn't do that right. We told you about it earlier. It'll save a lot of problems. All right, next clip. Here's an example of the first threat coming up the middle of the field. Now, something that I want to point out, and while this is a deep three meeting, notice our umpire. Back that up, Gregor. Notice, let it run. Notice that our umpire waits for all of the players, all of the opponents to pass his face before he turns. We'll have another clip later on that will show that the umpire turns almost immediately and starts jogging downfield, leaving unsupervised players. So if you're an umpire, make sure that you stay with the players until they clear. All right, now we got a little scrum there at about the 40-yard line. Now, I don't know that this is necessarily a fouling action, but it's certainly something that we want to clean up. We want to let people know that we're not going to accept that there's no point or no place in the game for that. All right. So someone, maybe it's a short wing, maybe it's the umpire, somebody needs to get to those players, particularly the player in the dark shirt, just simply to say, come on now, block the guy, whatever you want to do, but you don't need to lay on them, et cetera, et cetera. Talk them out of those kinds of things. All right, next clip. Here's going to be an example of, again, adjusting to the depth of the kick. I don't know the wind, how much wind we were getting, but again, our deep wing started out in proper position. He's got an active engagement. His key is actively engaged. This is an example of multitasking. You have to do both things at the same time. You have to keep an eye on that engagement while giving ground to make sure that you're maintaining your cushion. You can't do one or the other. You have to do both. All right, so let it run. Now this kick gets pretty well behind our deep wing. Our back judge is in full retreat mode. Now, the thing that I would like our back judges to do, and quite frankly, any of the deep three, is when you are in full retreat mode, practice turning your torso so that your shoulders are square to the sideline. We have two people essentially with their backs to players, all right? So if you turn at the waist while you are running, you'll be able to multitask again. Now, we eventually get behind this kick. Back judge again does a pretty good job, goes out of bounds actually behind our deep wing. Now, does it happen? Yes, but it shouldn't happen very often if we are alert to reacting to the depth and direction of the kick. All right, next clip. All right, I've stopped it here to give you an idea in terms of the proper vision lines that you should have, your peripheral vision. If the deep wing will put, in this particular case, the kick returner on his left eye, you will be able to see this engagement somewhere around the numbers. I promise you, if you put your nose on the kick returner, you really don't need to look at the back judge. You should know who that person is by now. He's not going to really be able to help you too much. We don't need to supervise him. We need to supervise the players. So if you learn and practice this technique of putting the kick returner on your inside eye, the players towards the sideline will open up to you. Okay, next clip. I know this is going to be a snap that's going to come from, let's see, this is 19. All right, here's the umpire mechanics that I want to point out that we need to do a better job of it. Watch the umpire here when the kick goes. He immediately turns and look at all of the opposite jersey colors that he left behind. We don't need him that far downfield that quickly. All right. We got plenty of help. We need him to stay behind the players. Look at those engagements that are going on, and we've turned our back to it. Now, the short wing should be looking at those engagements, but so should the umpire inside out. So don't be in a rush to turn. Let all of those opponents pass you before you turn. All right, next clip. We're going to get a snap from the plus 45. Now, when we get around the 50-yard line, the deep three, you got to be thinking about goal line. And actually, if you've got a stiff wind, maybe you need to start thinking about it 45, maybe even 40, depending on the ability of the kicker. But clearly here, the goal line is in play. So, you know, if you let this run, you're going to see that our deep wing at the top of the screen is going to set up at about the 10-yard line. I would advise, well, all right, he's at the 5. All right, so we started in good shape. All right, I can buy the 5-yard line, but as soon as that kick gives any indication that the goal line and the pylon are going to be threatened, immediately give ground while doing your other tasks like observing your keys and your opponents. We get there, but we're on the move when we recognize the kick. If we had moved immediately, we're stationary at the goal line as opposed to moving. Now here it was pretty obvious. It was a touchback, but they're not always going to be that obvious. So you need to do this right by making that commitment to get back to the pylon so that you can make all of your applicable reads. See, we're just starting now, and that ball, you know, is loose, and a lot of things can happen. So get back there where you belong. Back judge did a nice job getting back, getting the goal line between his legs. Good job. All right, next snap. Next clip. This is going to be an example of transition blocking because we're going to get some initial action, and those are the initial keys by the deep wings. Okay, let it go. All right, now here's an example of the kick returner with arms in legal position. That's proper. We're going to let anybody on team B field the ball unless there has been a fair catch signal. We're going to recognize that not as being an invalid. So all bets are off in terms of this particular action. Now we need to stay with these engagements. Like there's an engagement that's at about the 45-yard line. Now the deeps are going to have that first group. It's not to say you wouldn't see an active engagement closer to the line of scrimmage, but that's where our short wings have got to step up for us and take care of those intermediate kinds of situations so that we have those players covered. At the end of the play, if somebody ends up on their face or their back, and we go to them and say, how did that guy end up on the ground? That short wing or umpire is going to be able to say, yeah, I saw the whole thing. You know, he tripped or, you know, whatever. It was fine. Good. Thank you. All right, next clip. All right, we're going to get a snap inside the 50. Now, notice that our deep wing is at about the 19-yard line. That's sort of in no man's land. we're deeper than we would typically be on a scrimmage play, but we're not as deep as we should be. Now, notice as the clip runs, he's actually in front of the kick returner. Okay, let it go, Gregor. See where the kick returner is? Well, now all of a sudden, oh, I guess I need to get behind this. No, you start behind it. And then as the return develops, you stay 7 yards behind it. Now, here's something from a crew mechanic standpoint. Our short wing has progressed too far downfield. Look at the bill of his cap where he's looking. He's looking at the return. What he should be looking at are the opponents that are inside the brackets, just below the circle. Those are his keys. Well, he goes, oh boy, this return is going to break, and now I got to get on my horse. And of course, he gets past, and now he's going to point to the referee. Up, you got the goal line. Well, yeah, by default, he's got the goal line. If we had performed the mechanic correctly, he would have been back at the goal line extended. And this play, was it a big deal? No. But what happens if he's pursued from behind and that ball comes loose and there's a question, did he break the plane of the goal line or didn't he? Or did he drop the ball before he got to the goal line? We just need to do a better job. This is probably an example of somebody trying too hard, over hustling. And, I don't want to criticize people for hustling, but we can't hustle ourselves out of place. All right, enough said about that one. Next clip. All right, now we need to make in-game adjustments. This is our same deep wing that we had earlier that is still in front of the kick returner. Now, somebody on the crew, after the first time that we weren't in proper position, needs to get a hold of, let's say it's the side judge, and say, you need to be back here 7 yards behind the kick returner. We can't allow mistakes or improper mechanics to continue to reoccur during a game. So here was an opportunity, a missed opportunity, to clean this up so we would have better coverage downfield. All right, next clip. All right, notice what's happening here. Team B is substituting. Now, in college football, the umpire would be up over the ball holding the snap until Team B has completed their substitutions within reason. You don't have that rule in Federation. Now, it's worthy to note that even though you don't have a formal process or rule, the umpire still should be aware of it and make sure that our deep three are in proper position before he puts the ball down on the turf. Now, if B has been really, really slow in substituting, all right, they deserve what they get. But we do have a little bit of control that we ought to exercise to make sure that we are in position to officiate the play before we put that ball on the turf. All right, let it roll. Now, Team A is not going to respond to this. This was 4th and 5. So if they had been prepared to snap with extra players on the field, they would have made the line to gain because Team B would have fouled. For whatever reason, they chose not to do that. Now, we can't go to sleep on this, even though this have all the appearance of being a kick. It still is 4th and 5 around midfield. So until this actually becomes a kick, we have to assume that it could be a fake. All right, let it run. Now, notice we're slow getting back to our goal line. Now, that's probably lack of experience on the part of our deep wing. This was a semifinal game from this year. This is probably a person that doesn't normally work a deep wing position. I get it. I understand that. But we need to learn from these kinds of scenarios, whether you're a regular deep wing or you occasionally get an assignment, either regular season or in the playoffs. We need to know how to properly perform the mechanic. So we don't want to be making decisions involving the goal line or the pylon on the run. we have to be prepared to know the depth and the direction of the kick, get started early. When we do realize that we need to go, make that commitment to our retreat so that we get where we need to go. Okay, next clip. What we're going to have now is a collision downfield. Now, as it turns out, okay, let it go, Gregor. We end up with contact by Team A with Team B. However, if you run it back, you will notice that the teammate of Team B, the kick returner, is in contact with, and we would deem philosophically that that contact put the Team A player into that position of making contact with the kick returner. If we're going to call KCI, it's got to be unimpeded on the part of that player that fouls going into that area, either with contact or too close for comfort. Now, the other part of this that's really, really good is that the back judge, because of preparation, knew that even though that contact was legal and the ball was recovered by Team A, they could not advance because it was a muff, not a fumble, and he shuts it down. That's really, really good awareness, really, really good mechanics on his part to make sure that we get that shut down. Now, the deep wing on that side has got to go with players out of bounds, even though we've got a dead ball. And we're going to put it back at the spot of the recovery. We need to finish the play to make sure that we don't have people that are making bad choices there out of bounds, because as you can see, we're going to have opposite jersey colors into the bench area. So we've got to clean that up. We need to go to the player. Somebody should go right over to that red player who's on the ground in the Team A bench and physically bring him back to the field. Physically bring him back until he is free of foul. Okay? Now watch the player who kind of comes over him. Now that's marginal there in terms of taunting. If that had been flagged for a taunt, I would have supported that. This guy runs over there. He's looking down at the guy. He's standing over the guy. But the operative point here is that, well, again, we'll call it this is first half. So whichever it is, let's say it's the field judge. Field judge physically needs to go over there and make sure that nothing bad happens, including bringing this red-shirted player back to the field. All right, next clip. All right, our keys are coming right there. You can see our first threats down the field. Now, see, we're cruising. We weren't deep enough. We didn't adjust to the depth of the kick. We need to get behind that kick by starting in the right position. We're surprised by what happens there. And when we're surprised, we're not nearly as strong or as good as we are when we anticipate. All right, this is the one. All right, so everyone is thinking the guy is in scrimmage kick formation because we're approximately 10 yards deeper than the line of scrimmage. Now, we have an unbalanced formation here, unbalanced line. The only way this formation can be legal is for the player that is circled to be an ineligible receiver. He's got to be a tackle, all right? Now, if you let this run, watch what that tackle does. Comes out, engages a player. He's now a good 5 yards downfield, comes back to that position, and that's where he is when this pass is thrown downfield. Now, we don't recognize this. We don't get this as a foul. and Team A retains possession of the ball with a first down when we really should have had an ineligible downfield. Now, primary responsibility on that, you should know, is the line of scrimmage folks, with the umpire perhaps providing support and assistance. But downfield, if something doesn't look right or feel right, when you see things breaking down, you need to start thinking about the potential bad scenarios that can occur. Now, I would say that our back judge for sure should have an awareness of that player. That player came out and initiated a block. So at the very least, at the end of the play, it would have been appropriate for the back judge to come in and say, now, in this case, it's number 70. I'll give you a clue. So, but let's say he's got an eligible number on. It would be appropriate for the back judge to come up and say, I had number 80 downfield blocking. So maybe the mere fact he's blocking on a pass that crosses the line, we have OPI. But you hear what I'm saying here. We need to come in and ask questions. And even though late flags are not desirable, they're a whole lot better than not putting one down when we need one. And that's where the crew mentality and the crew strength from within has to come into play, where we can come in and work through problems and end up with a better solution than if either we guess or we say, well, I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say anything. And then we'll look at the video and we go, oh man, really messed that up. We needed to get this foul.
Rich, we got a question.
A lot of people have a responsibility here. So, including our back judge. All right, what's the question, Gregor?
Nick wants to know, what is the best way to communicate a quick kick with a deep three?
Well, if you have the benefit of O2O, you just key the mic and you simply say, hey, alert for a quick kick. Now, if you've studied video, if you're astute as far as your teams, you may know from previous games, word of mouth and otherwise, that a particular team or a really talented young man is potentially going to quick kick for Team B. We just need to do a good job of initially recognizing the situation, getting into the proper position, and then adjusting our position based on what happens, depth of the kick, the return, whatever it might happen to be. And there is never, ever a time where we have a playoff and we have nothing to do. Even if the kick goes away, you have something to do. All right, let's transition.
Hey, Rich?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, quick question. So when they do this quick kick, the snapper does not have protection in those situations, correct?
That's right, because they're not in legal scrimmage kick formation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be fouled. It just means that the usual protection because of the vulnerability of a long snapper is no longer in place.
Perfect. I mean, I've had coaches ask, especially when St. Thomas, because they do the quick kick. They're like, so does he have protection? And we're like, well, not from the normal scrimmage kick formation, but yeah, like you said, he can still be fouled. But they always ask that question: does my guy have to slide off the center as soon as we know he's gonna do a quick kick? And it's like, no.
You can't have it both ways. You know,
correct.
You're either in legal scrimmage kick formation or you're not.
Yeah.
So that's the short answer.
Thanks.
Not the answer they want to hear, but it's the answer. All right, so let me go back here and share my screen on free kicks. First of all, the title says it all. Free kick. It's a free for all. Maybe that would be a better way to describe it. There are just all sorts of things we have to be prepared to deal with. So let's get into some of them. First of all, those who have been a part of this series for any length of time know one of my go-to phrases with free kicks is that every free kick is a short kick until it's not. So if you start with that mentality, you're not going to be as surprised as you will be as if you assume that the kick is just going to go for a touchback into the end zone. So from a perspective of the front four, which includes our umpire and back judge on Team A's restraining line, and then field judge, side judge on Team B's restraining line, we're all starting from the back edge of the white. And we do that for a couple reasons. Number one, to give us some more room to work over there, get the players and the coaches back. But the other part of it is that it gives us a wider perspective to look at action, particularly when we do have a short kick. So make sure that the white area is clear. There's the philosophy in terms of, is Team A encroaching or not? If it's a regular depth kick, then there needs to be a clear cut, obvious. Graham in the top row can say, "Yep, they encroached." Otherwise, we're going to let it go. But we have a pane of glass there if this is any sort of a short kick, and they have to stay behind their restraining line until the ball is legally kicked. You need to make sure you complete your checklist, all of those things that can potentially happen on that short kick. And we're going to see a play in a few minutes on a short kick where Team A blocks before they're eligible to touch the ball. We can't be surprised by those kinds of scenarios if we're going through our checklist, not only at the moment of the game that potentially that can happen, but we need to do that during the week or in our pregame, that we're going through those sorts of things so that we are as prepared as we possibly can. We need to make sure that we've confirmed our count for A and B so that we're ready to go. All right, have to see the ball off the tee. And in Federation that if the ball is kicked directly into the turf, it potentially is a foul. I say potentially because then you get into interpretations. And the way we're currently interpreting that is that if the ball is kicked directly into the ground and it gets high enough that a Team B player has to look up to field the ball, then it's foul. If the Team B player does not have to look up with the eyes, then we're deeming that to be a legal kick. All right, we want Team A to pass. Well, they're automatically going to pass the back judge and the umpire, but we also want, as the two field judge, side judge, to wait for Team A to pass before you move off of your respective restraining line. We do that for a couple reasons. First and foremost, it's a timing mechanism. If you get started too soon, there's a better chance that you're going to progress too far downfield and then lose the benefit of the mechanic that we're trying to use. Note the Team A routes that they're taking. We don't want to start numbering until they have established, even though they're going to cross sometimes within a few yards, they're going to show you who's going to be the widest and what the order is going to be from outside to in or inside to out. And that's important because we're going to have our deep wings taking the widest three, and then our inside, our back judge or our umpire will take the inside three. Now there's some overlap there, that's on purpose. And we want to make sure that we observe Team A players near the sideline to make sure that they stay in bounds, or if they do want to go out of bounds, that they've been blocked. All right, we need also take special note of kicks near the sideline. Now, obviously, we could have either team touch it, particularly if it has gone beyond the required 10 yards, or they're eligible to touch. Then we need to know, is that kick untouched out of bounds by Team B, or did Team B touch it? We need to be prepared to retreat and to return in the event that the play goes towards our goal line here. And you can see and illustrated here in this picture that we don't have a deep wing down here at the goal line, but we have excellent coverage by our cheerleaders. All right, specifically on short free kicks. Number one, we got to do all of those previous things that we talked about. we're going to have limited movement from the front four or the front six. Hopefully, well, first of all, if you anticipate a short kick, you should have six in the box, including our short wings up front. And by the way, before that kick occurs, you need to convene a little conference there between all three of you on that sideline to review basic responsibilities of who's going to do what, so that we don't have an overlap or a gap in our responsibilities. Limited movement, keep a wide view. We need to make sure that we know when Team A is eligible to touch. Team A's restraining line is a plane if we have a short kick. We previously talked about that. And here's a key. I saw this in a game a few years ago where a short kick, let's say, went towards the field judge's side of the field. And mayhem occurred over there. And the side judge came all the way across the field and saved the crew by providing information that the ball had been illegally touched by a Team A player before they were eligible to touch. And because that official was alert, even though it was on the other third of the field, maybe even by the numbers, he saved the crew. So don't go to sleep if the kick goes away from you. Make sure you continue to work the play from the outside in. We are the replay on the field. We don't have the benefit at the high school level of going upstairs and someone potentially giving us information that we don't have. But we do have the benefit of bringing everyone together as a crew and working through scenarios to help get the play right. Clock status. That might seem like it's insignificant, and most of the time it's not as important as those other things that we previously talked about, but yet it's something we need to be aware of. Here's a key though. We need to, if at the end of the play, if we convene and you say, that ball was loose for a couple of seconds and I didn't wind the clock and the clock is still sitting as it was when the score occurred, there's nothing wrong with the referee coming on the microphone and saying, the ball was legally touched in the field of play. Please adjust the game clock to, and then provide the amount of time that we need to have remaining on the clock. Now, that's important, even if it's in the first quarter, because while it isn't critical time-wise at that particular point, it sets the stage and provides an indication of what we're going to do when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter. We need to do the same thing in the first quarter that we would do at the end of the game. So make those clock adjustments when applicable. Remember that fair catch and opportunity to catch, that kick returner must have that unimpeded opportunity and obviously the safety that goes along with it. Remember, we need to, and by the way, the things that are mentioned here are only illustrative. It's not intended to be an exhaustive, exclusive, or inclusive list. I would encourage you to go through and work all of those things that could potentially happen in short kick or any free kick situations. Forced touching could be an issue. Like, let's say that kick has not gone the required 10 yards and hasn't been touched by B. We have to be alert for someone forcing another player into the ball. And then we should be prepared to administer that accordingly. Batting can be an issue, particularly when it's over near the sideline, someone trying to bat it out of bounds to prevent an opponent from recovering. Typically, that's Team B that's trying to prevent the opponent from recovering it. Now, we know you can bat a ball backwards, but we certainly can't bat it forward. All right. Another one of my go-to phrases, an ounce of prevention prevents a ton of surprise. The more we can think through these things, the better off we're going to be. Commit time to studying your free kick rules. Think through scenarios. Talk about them as a group or as part of your crew. The front four maybe could take 5 minutes in a pregame and just talk through those sorts of things while the referee and the umpire are doing their work with the coach. Develop a checklist for quick reference. I used to have one for both scrimmage kicks and free kicks, including short kicks, so that if there was time in the locker room before the game and there was some dead time, I could pull out that little checklist and kind of go through it and just mentally remind myself of those things so that when I got into those scenarios on the field, that I was thinking through mentally what I had reviewed in the locker room. Beanbag in your hand before every free kick. Whether you're a member of the front four or the front six, that beanbag should be in your hand. And last but certainly not least, always see leather before you put air in the whistle. All right, our clips on free kicks. Again, if you need to go, I apologize for running over. No problem. Go ahead and, like I said, just pick it up on the replay of it. All right, this first kick is going to be, well, let's run it. This is just a kick. It's 57, so it's middle of the second quarter. You think you got a deep kick going, and boom, this guy doesn't hit it quite right, and he ends up striking a member of Team B on the front line. Now, back judge does a great job here. If this kick goes all the way through, we don't have encroachment. If you go, and we won't take the time to do it, I did. I went back frame by frame, and you can see where a player of Team A encroaches on the restraining line before the kick. So back judge did a tremendous job in this situation, waiting to see whether it was going to be a regular kick where he was going to pass on that technical infraction, or here when he recognized that there was an advantage to it, that he blew it down for encroachment. Now in college football, obviously we would let it run through, make it a live ball foul as opposed to a dead ball foul. Slight difference there. All right, next clip. This also is going to be a short kick, and it illustrates a very, very important concept. Watch, see, the kick is behind, it's back there at the 45-yard line. So the kicker did not perform the short kick quite the way probably he practiced it. But now you've got all these players that are ahead of the football, and the football is nowhere close to Team B's restraining line. So what can Team A do? Absolutely nothing until they're eligible to touch. They can't block. And in this particular case, one of these front players comes up because that was his job, to perform a block on a player. Unfortunately, he didn't wait for the ball to get to the restraining line. So we would have a 10-yard foul in federation and a 5-yard foul in college football for illegal procedure, at least in college, and probably an illegal block by federation. We have to be alert to that. That was whether it was planned or not. I assume it was planned based on what happened, but it was early enough in the game that obviously they saw something on video that they thought they could take advantage. One of the things that we talked about at the end of last year that was going to be a priority for this year is illustrated on this clip. We need to do a better job of read and react. Right now, it should be clear to the deep four or the deep three and the umpire that this has got a chance for a long return. We've got to read it and now get busy and make that full commitment to our retreat so that we can continue to officiate this play all the way to the goal line. Okay, let it go, Gregor. Now, as luck would have it, the player got tackled probably by the last guy. Otherwise, this guy is probably still running. But the operative point is it isn't always going to work out that way, and we've got to be prepared mentally and physically that we're going to have to get back and defend the goal line at the other end of the field. Now, the other part of this, as previously mentioned with punts, we got to make sure that when we are in full retreat, that we've turned our torso so that our shoulders are approximately parallel to the sideline, as opposed to running with our back to players trying to get to a spot. But this will be a priority, and when we get to our base mechanics for the deep three, we'll spend a lot more time on it. The other thing is, this is not the side judge or field judge's spot. We need to be patient, let the short wing come up and take this spot. Our job is to officiate the players around the pile and the players that are pursuing from behind. You may have a really good idea what yard line it needs to go on, so that when the short wing comes up, you just simply say, hey, Bill, Bob, Susie, put it on the 48. Okay, but let them do their job. You do your job. All right, next clip. All right, this is going to be a free kick out of bounds. And this is a tough one because it's sort of midway between our deep wing and our short wing. If this was an 8-person game with a center judge in the middle of the field, the center judge would be able to help in terms of lining up someone to get the spot out of bounds. Here, the key point is that the deep wing and the short wing need to communicate who's going to take the spot. We don't want 2 people running to the spot. One to the spot, and the other one supervise the players in the area. Do the best you can. Just like a shank punt on a bounce, we do the best we can with determining a spot. And then, of course, we have the free kick out of bounds options that we have to give to Team B in terms of what they want to do, including re-kicking. All right, next clip. This is going to be a mid-range kick, and this is one of the developments in the game that has come up in the last few years. And again, like quick kicks, it's designed to reduce the potential that Team A is going to make a long return. They're willing to give up field position of a snap at the 35 compared to that kick returner taking it all the way back. So we are spread out in scenarios like this because typically the kick is going to come down somewhere in between the short wing and the deep wing. That requires communication between those officials in terms of who's going to do what. Are we going to wait for the short wing to come up and take the spot? Or is the deep wing, because it's shallow and closer to him or her, is the deep wing going to take the spot? And then, as previously mentioned, the other official needs to do the opposite job in terms of cleaning up. So here we end up with 2 Team B players that collide. So that's their bad. And then what we're going to end up here with is a recovery by Team A. So it's no big deal other than, had the catch been completed, how would we have covered it? Now here you can see the short wing comes up and is going to take forward progress of the recovery. So the short wing needs to slow down, broaden the vision, and look at the players around the pile. Likewise, from behind, the umpire coming from the top of the screen needs to come into the hash mark or near it and is going to supervise from the inside out. If it was on the other side of the field, the back judge would have inside out responsibilities. Again, we need to talk about these scenarios so that we get full coverage. All right, next clip. All right, now this one is going to be kick catch interference, and it's one of those things that we need to be prepared to deal with. So we're going to get that kick that's going to go downfield. Kick returner comes up, attempts to field it, and gets smashed. So obvious KCI, because that player must have an unimpeded opportunity to come up and field the ball. So that's going to be a spot foul. We're not going to re-kick. That's going to be enforced from the approximate spot of the foul, which is about the 40-yard line. But again, how are we going to cover that? We get flags down, multiple flags, which is good. We need to, after the play settles down, after we've cleared the opponents from each other, then we're going to come together and we're going to talk it through and be prepared then for one voice to tell the referee what we have. All right, next clip. This is going to be a long return up the middle. So we've got action that is going to be covered by those widest people are going to be the responsibility of the field judge, side judge. And then the inside people are going to be watched and observed by the umpire and the back judge. But at the same time, while we're watching those players, we need to be prepared to give ground in the event that this kick return goes back all the way. See, the deep wing was stationary at the 45-yard line. And no way are we going to get back to the goal line if we don't get started sooner than that. See, stationary, legs are locked, knees are locked. Only now are we beginning to think to give ground. Never assume that a runner is going to be tackled or driven out of bounds until it actually happens. You have to assume that they're going to break the tackle, they're going to tiptoe the sideline, and they're going to continue downfield. Next clip. I know. Go to the next one, Gregor. All right, let's go to 35. I don't want to go too long tonight. So drop down to 35, please. All right, this is an unusual formation. Now, maybe you picked up on this in your scouting of this happened to be Muskegon. So maybe you picked up that they might do this, but let's say that they just hauled it out for the first time for this semifinal. All right, and you don't know that they're going to be lined up like this until they physically do it. All right, there's still time for you to go, oh, okay. Now, if you are the umpire on that side of the field, you got to be thinking they got to have 4 players on that side of the field when this guy kicks, and the guy that's at the hash is right there. Now, that's okay, and we're not going to nitpick that. But let's say as this guy is coming up, this player right here starts moving in this direction. Can you see my cursor?
No, Rich.
Okay.
Which player are you talking about?
Talking about the 4th player in at the 35-yard line. Let's say as the kicker starts advancing, that player starts moving towards the bottom of the screen. That's foul because they now only have 3 players on that side of the field. So those are the kinds of scenarios that we need to think of. Now here, I'd be thinking if I was one of the deep 3, that this is probably going to be a short kick, probably to the bottom of the screen. Now, that's not what the kicker does. He executes a little pooch kick, and we end up with, I believe, a fair catch, by one of the up guys. But now, after that happens, and nothing bad happened, we're good. All right, the next opportunity that we have, like on a timeout or end of a quarter, that'd be a good time for people to get together and say, all right, we got to be prepared for that formation at some point later in the game. If you have the benefit of halftime, okay, you can talk about it at that juncture, but let's not be surprised and fail to communicate when we see something that's unusual that could be problematic for us. All right, Gregor, let's jump very quickly to referee U. A couple more clips we're going to call tonight. And again, while we're doing that, I apologize for running over. I got a little long-winded on the PowerPoint. And by the way, the PowerPoints will be included with the recording to use at your discretion. All right, now this is the opening kickoff of one of the state finals. All right, everybody's excited. We're pumped up. We're glad to be there. But now, we got to understand what our jobs are and make sure that we execute our jobs accordingly. Okay, pretty typical return. But now at the bottom of the screen, look at what we're doing down here. We got all these opponents and we're looking for a ball. There will be time to get a ball. They won't start without a ball at the hash mark. All right, so the first business, the blocks look pretty good. Don't see anything there that's problematic. Maybe the potential of blindside block doesn't develop. Runners tackled out of bounds at the 35. We got players in the opponent's bench area. We've got opponents near each other in the field of play. Slow down. There's no need to hunt a ball this quickly. Okay. All right, next clip. This is also the opening kickoff of a different final. Now, our deep wing at the top has not moved too far downfield. So far, he's good. Okay. He's looking at his players, but now, okay, now we don't adjust to the fact that the runner potentially has the sideline. We need to give ground there to make sure that we've got our sideline covered all the way to the goal line. All right. Number 94 is our last clip of the night. All right, now here we've gone too far downfield. The deep wing has gone too far downfield too soon. And if you run that back, the reason why we want you to stay back is angles. Okay, stop right there. When we get that far downfield, look at the angle that our deep wing has of these blocks compared to if he was back at the 45 or even the 50. Now you can see through players if you're back here at the 50. When you're this far up, look how your sight lines are affected. You know, that's over hustling. You know, I'm all for hustle. But hustle, but don't hurry. And in this particular case, we forfeited some coverage because we went too far downfield. Now he recovers, he gets some depth, probably was in a position to be able to cover the goal line at the other end of the field had it gone that far. Once again, I want to appreciate and express my appreciation to everyone that is taking time out of your schedule and away from family time to participate in this, whether it be live or by reviewing the replay. So we're all in this together. You know, the goal is for us to do it as well as we can for the benefit of the teams and especially the players. But at the same time, there is such a great feeling of gratification when we do it really, really well. And when we have a tough situation that we nail as a crew, or we're alert to an unusual ruling that someone brings to our attention and that we properly enforce a penalty. Those are the kinds of things that mean a lot. So that's how we get better. And we can't know the rules well enough. And I'll close with this. My pastor has a PhD in theology. And he has told me many, many times that every time he reads the Bible, he sees something new, or he has a thought about how that applies that he had not previously thought about. So if a guy with a PhD can learn something new every time he picks up the Bible, can we learn something new every time we pick up the rule book? My guess is, yeah, that probably ought to be the right answer. So again, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. Have a great week. Eat those bananas. Get ready for the start of the season so that we're not cramping up. All right. Good night, everybody.